backgrounds all at the intersection of energy, technology, and finance. So before Plentify, I worked for Google, running their African energy business, which involved funding big wind and solar farms and developing technologies to expand access to electricity. Before that, I worked in carbon finance, and before that, in a variety of consulting roles focused on the energy and sustainability space. At Plentify, we are razor focused, though, on enabling affordable, reliable, and clean electricity services. And the product that we're going to tell you about today is a big step forward in realizing this vision. You'll obviously have seen from the press release that this is not just a Plentify thing only, that this is a launch that we're doing together with our partner, HotBot. This is a really important partnership for HotBot, for Plentify, and we hope for the South African energy system as well. HotBot, you may already know, is the largest solar equipment distributor in South Africa, and they've been pioneering innovations into the South African energy space for many years already. For example, they were the ones that were instrumental in making SunSync, the inverter brand, a household South African brand. So hopefully with HotBot, we can get this into many homes across South Africa through their network of more than 200 trusted installers. And as you'll see from this presentation today, the technology which Plentify is bringing to the table is really distinctive, unique, and can really help drive forward the energy transition. So with that, let me just pause and actually just invite you both to ask any questions as we go through this as well. I'm happy for this to be as interactive as you'd like it to be. Cool, let's get going. So just first a brief agenda of what we're going to go through. We'll tell you a little bit about Plentify in general. We'll take you through the Plentify products, dive into our bots specifically, which is a part of our product suite, take you through a couple of case studies so you can get a sense of the impact that our products can make. And finally, there'll be time for Q&A at the end to the extent that it doesn't come up through the course of the conversation. Cool. Hey, Nikki, good to have you up. We were just about to dive in, so you arrived just in time to hear about Plentify and our products. So firstly, what is Plentify? It's an intelligent home energy management system. It's powered by a set of applications, the Plentify app, which our users get, and the Plentify dashboard, which our installers get. And these apps and dashboards connect to a suite of hardware products. And ultimately, all of this exists to enable installers and homeowners to get more from their solar, to maximize solar self-consumption and minimize their reliance on grid electricity. These apps, as I mentioned, are powered by our bots. So the real work is being done by the hardware on site, and there's two bots that we currently have in the market. The first is HotBot, which connects to your geyser. This can be an electric geyser or a thermosiphon solar geyser. And then there's SolarBot, which we just launched last week together with HotBot, and connects to your residential inverter, starting with SunSync and DEA inverters, soon to add SunGrow, and then a bunch more inverters after that. These obviously connect to your appliances. One of the cool things about them that we'll highlight later is these devices can talk wirelessly to each other as well and help to do local optimizations, which are then accessed via the Plentify app. So why are people choosing Plentify? Well, there's two sides to this. There's why homeowners are choosing Plentify, and there's why installers are choosing to promote Plentify. So homeowners are choosing Plentify for three primary reasons. It's control, savings, and intelligence. On the control side, we give them access to an app through which they can monitor and control their solar system or their geyser, and we'll give you a demo of that app in a bit. Secondly, savings. They can make better use of their battery. They can eliminate wasted energy from their geyser. And any energy that's remaining, they can shift a lot of that over to sunny times to ensure that they're using as much solar as possible and as little grid electricity as possible. And finally, intelligence. The system surfaces really easy to understand insights and information, so you can run your system better and figure out how to upgrade it over time. Installers, on the other hand, are choosing to install Plentify because firstly, it gives them a competitive advantage. When your customer gets a better performing solar system, it reflects really well on you as the installer. Secondly, customer satisfaction. Through our system, we can proactively surface issues before they become noticed by the homeowner. and send this to the installer so that they can provide proactive support and ultimately improve customer satisfaction. And finally, opportunities for upgrades. What our system does is it will optimize your solar and battery system as far as possible, but it's going to be limited potentially by the infrastructure itself. For example, if you don't have any solar panels on your roof, you're not going to produce any solar. And so what the system does beyond that, it says, cool, we've optimized as far as possible, but you can do X, install more solar panels, for example, and this will benefit you in this way. And we can give those recommendations to the installers along with data-driven analyses to back that up, which they can then use to go and hopefully upsell their customers to get ultimately cheaper solar power. So that's Plentify at a high level. Let's dive into the products themselves, starting with the application. So as I mentioned, we're going to demo this to you in a second, but just to give you a high-level snapshot first. This is an easy-to-use user app, and I think easy to use is a big emphasis for us. A big problem with these distributed energy systems is you often need like a PhD to interpret what's happening within the app and understanding how your energy is flowing. We've put a lot of effort into simplifying this and conveying the information in as intuitive way as possible. What users of the app can do is firstly control and monitor their Plentify bots with ease. And here there's something distinctive as well in that on the monitoring side, if you look at the SunSync app or the SolarMan app or the Solar Assistant app or any of those apps, generally they are sending data updates every 5 to 10 minutes. Whereas for the energy flows in the Plentify app, this is updated every 2 seconds. It's effectively live data. So for example, you go and turn a kettle on in your kitchen, you'll see the load jump in your home. And so you can get much better real-time insights into what is happening with the energy in your home. The way we control things is also very different, and I'll go into that in a second. We can optimize your battery for more solar. We can direct surplus solar to your geyser and deliver insights to help you to get more. So rather than kind of telling you about this in theory, let me connect up my phone to this meeting and I will give you a quick demo. Give me 1 second. Of course, I set this up in advance and I am struggling. Give me 1 second to try to figure out the technical details here. Okay, we are in. So this is the Plentify app. The first thing you see on the home page is an animation of how energy is flowing in your home. So you can see in this particular home, they are getting about 1.25 kilowatts from solar at the moment, and they're drawing about 4.5 kilowatts. As you can see, it's changing constantly from the battery, and the rest, and all that energy is then flowing into the home. There's a tiny amount coming from the grid. You can also see all of their connected devices, which in this case is just their geyser. You can obviously click in there and you can see a bunch of settings. So you can see that they've set their geyser to a maximum of 60 degrees and their heating mode is on auto, which basically means it'll use surplus solar whenever it's possible. But they could also override the geyser on, say for the next hour, or they could turn it off until tomorrow. But given this is somebody's real house, let's leave it on auto just the way that they liked it. So that's the homepage, very simple, gives you a snapshot of what is happening in your house in real time. And you can see, for example, the geyser is busy drawing 3 kilowatts right now of that 5.4 odd kilowatts. Next, if we go to the insights page, in fact, before I go to insights, let me go to the automations page and then explain to you what the automations are doing, and then the insights will make more sense. So you can see that we offer two types of automations at the moment, hot water optimizations and energy automations. In the hot water optimizations, we give you a whole bunch of options. Firstly, you can set your hot water routines. So if I click in there, sorry, it's just loading. You'll see that this particular user has set up that they want hot water between 5 and 6 p.m. every night. They used to have 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. in the morning, but they've disabled that off. If they wanted to turn it on, they could just click that on, for example. One thing that's very different about our app from how, for example, geyser timers work is with a geyser timer, say that you wanted hot water at 5 p.m. You would then need to figure out how long in advance you want your geyser to turn on and set your timer accordingly. So for example, you might set it from 3 to 5 p.m. to ensure that you have hot water available at 5 p.m. But this is it's a non-trivial problem to solve, because how long you need to heat your geyser is a function of what temperature it was to start with, how quickly it heats, any other events that you're going to have in that time, and even more complicated if you want to try align that with solar. With us, you just say, I want hot water between 5 and 6 p.m., and the system figures out the most efficient way to heat your water to deliver it to you at 5 p.m. That'll include a combination of shifting the heating as close as possible to the demand time to try to minimize losses from standing losses, as well as shifting heating to when extra solar is available as much as possible. In addition, you can do other automations. For example, you can preheat your water before load shedding, so that you're sure that you aren't stuck with a cold shower due to inadvertent load shedding. And you can prevent your geyser from draining your battery by effectively turning your geyser off anytime that your battery is discharging, helping you to save that useful energy for elsewhere in your house. We also offer a bunch of energy automations. And again, this is very different to how other systems are structured. So in other systems, what you would do is you'd say, I want the minimum state of charge of my battery to be, say, 80%. And what they would do is it would say, cool, whenever the battery drops below 80% and grid is available, charge the battery from the grid up to 80%. And this is actually not a terrible example, because this is exactly what installers did. When somebody installed a solar system in their house during the height of load shedding, the installer would go to them and say, hey, why did you get the system? And they would say, because I never want to experience load shedding again. So they say, okay, cool. We're going to set your minimum state of charge to 80%. Therefore, your battery is going to be full most of the time, and you're going to be protected from load shedding. And so the batteries would stay mostly charged, and still do stay mostly charged, despite the fact that they're actually not needed for load shedding anymore, or back then that they were needed at all times of the day for load shedding. With us, it's different. You tell us, what outcome do you want from your solar system? And we give you three choices. Optimized, where you will be protected from all load shedding. Extended, where you'll be protected from all load shedding as well as all unplanned outages. Or custom, where you want to take control yourself. So that what the system is doing here is it's effectively predicting your demand, and it's looking at load shedding schedules, etc., to figure out how much your battery needs to be charged in every moment of the day. So for example, if at 5 p.m. your battery will need to be more charged than at 2 a.m. because you get expected to use more power between 5 and 7 than between 2 and 4 a.m. as an example. So now that we've set all these automations, and this particular user has it on custom for the moment, we can go to the insights, and you can see what's happening. I'm just going to go back to the 29th, actually, since it's a very cloudy day in Cape Town today. So you can see that this particular user has, yesterday, they got 91% of their home energy consumption of solar and only 9% from the grid. That was 17.4 kilowatt hours from solar and 1.7 kilowatt hours from grid. You can also see how they used that energy. So you can see that a bunch of it was used to charge the battery in the morning, and then there were kind of spikes in the purple in the home use over the course of the day. Where that energy came from, we can see by looking at the energy sources. So you can see that during the day, it predominantly came from solar, and in the evening, we started drawing down the battery with a small amount of grid being used through the night to see us through. And finally, you can see how well your solar performed by comparing the solar generated to the available solar. And this is a really important distinction, because your solar system will not produce energy if it doesn't have anywhere to go. And so if your battery is fully charged and demand in your home is insufficient, your solar system will be curtailed. And that's exactly what we're seeing in this example here, where utilization of solar was very high until late morning. And then when the battery was fully charged, that solar had nowhere to go. And so we see this purple unused but potential solar that could be harnessed. And that'll become really relevant as we get deeper into this presentation. So you can see on average, they actually only used about 60%, 61% of their solar potential. And with that, managed to achieve 91% off-grid status. You can obviously change the time periods as well. So there was the 1 day, but you can look at like the 7-day view, the 4-week view, the 1-year view, etc. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of the Plentify app. Let me stop sharing that for a second and head back to the slides. Let me pause actually and see if there's any questions before I continue. Cool, then we'll continue. So I'm going to skip over these slides on the app demo. Essentially, it's way ahead of me. She already got rid of the slides. Thank you, Z. The other part of the product, at least the other interface part of the product, is the Plentify dashboard. So whereas the user app is used by homeowners as their interface to their home, the Plentify dashboard is used by installers as an interface to their fleet of solar installations. And with this Plentify dashboard, installers can monitor their entire fleet. This is quite different to current products as well, where you'd have a dashboard for SunSync and a dashboard for SunGrow and a dashboard for the next inverter brand. We provide a unified interface to provide information about all of these systems, irrespective of the inverter. Secondly, they can receive early alerts. If something goes wrong, we'll surface that to the installer so that they can take proactive action. And finally, they can gather insights into their fleet's performance, not just by diving into one specific device and evaluating its performance, but spotting trends for things that might be going wrong across their fleet, which could talk to more systemic issues. Both of these interfaces are ultimately powered by our Plentify bots. These are the hands, the eyes, and the ears of our systems, the ones doing the actual seeing and the work itself. So let me start with SolarBot, and I've got a nice boxed one over here. So here's a SolarBot in its beautiful packaging, and when you open it up, that's what our little SolarBot looks like. So you can see it's a small device, slides up like that, and on this side over here, you've got a bunch of ports that you plug basically telephone jacks into. You'll see that there's a bunch of labels on here. So you can connect in your inverter. There's something called a pass-through over here. Effectively, if you've got a dongle, for example, your SunSync dongle, your SolarMan dongle, your Solar Assistant dongle, you can plug that into SolarBot and use the two in parallel. So you can still access the Plentify app, but you can plug your dongle in and access the third-party app as well, in addition to receiving firmware updates, etc. You'll see there's a battery port on here. That's for a future project. We've got something here called Plumbus, which is a Rick and Morty. If you're a fan of Rick and Morty, it's a Rick and Morty reference, and it's our all-purpose home device, a wide interface to basically connect anything. We've got a power supply port over here, but actually, if you're using a SunSync Dea or SunGrow inverter, it takes the power off the RS485 connection, and so no external power is actually even needed. And then we've got a couple of optional ports there for external antennae as well, for both the Wi-Fi and the RF, which the devices use to talk to each other with, in case the signal isn't strong enough. The cool things about this is it maximizes solar self-consumption. It's very much plug and play. All you got to do is plug in a telephone jack onto this side and plug in a cable to your inverter on the other side into its comms port. The other product, one sec, is not coming up yet. First, I've got to tell you how SolarBot works. So SolarBot's effectively doing two things. It is optimizing your battery state of charge, and it is connecting the appliances in your home to solar. So on the optimal battery state of charge, I told you that example earlier of how in the past, installers would simply ask you, hey, what was the purpose for installing the system? And if the answer was load shedding, the chances are they would respond by setting a very high battery state of charge. The result of that is that, say that was set at 80%, when you wake up in the morning, your battery will be charged to 80%. And so when the sun comes up, there's not much headroom in that battery. There's only 20% left until solar has fully charged it. And so by 10, 11 in the morning, you could expect your battery to be fully charged. And beyond that point, since demand in your home is low, the solar would likely be curtailed and you'd significantly undergenerate. With SolarBot, it works differently. So instead of just starting the day at a blanket 80%, we take a more intelligent approach. We look at when are you expected to have your next outage? How much demand are you expected to use in your home? What is the weather forecast? And combining all these different pieces of data together, we can figure out what is the right charge level to start your day. And if that's 20 or 30%, that's a lot more room in your battery to absorb solar. And so solar can continue generating till much later in the day. However, in most cases, you'll still fully charge your battery, even from 20% by, say, 1, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And so at that point, instead of letting the solar be curtailed, we start wirelessly talking to the appliances in your home. And SolarBot will wirelessly say to HotBot, hey, there's extra solar now, turn on. And the geyser will turn on. Or, hey, there's an unexpected outage now, and you want to prevent the geyser from draining the battery, turn off. And HotBot will turn the geyser off. While we started with geysers and HotBot specifically, the idea is for SolarBot to become the core of our broader home energy management system. And so we'll be wirelessly talking to a range of different appliances, both with Plentify bots attached, as well as with third-party control devices. And there's a whole suite of those we'll be connecting in the next few months. The other part of the product is HotBot. So I've got a HotBot over here. It's also a smallish device, 15 by 15 centimeters. And this is what trains your geyser to use less energy and talks to SolarBot wirelessly to shift that heating onto solar as much as possible. This is also a pretty simple device to install. To give you a sense of it, we've got a bunch of color-coded sensors that plug in there, again with telephone jacks. You splice the power to the geyser through these terminals, and that's pretty much it. Very different to what you'll see from other controllers where you'll have an exposed PCB with lots of tiny pins. We've tried to make everything intuitive, color-coded, and hopefully built in such a way that people can leave site with no mistakes in place. And we've got a bunch of other stuff to aid with that too. So how HotBot works is, firstly, it maximizes efficiency through intelligence. What this means is it learns your usage patterns, it learns when you like to use hot water, and adapts your heating around those patterns. To give you an example of why this can be so impactful, if you look at how geysers operate at the moment, by default, they are controlled by a mechanical thermostat. This is a device that was invented about 150 years ago and hasn't been updated since. And how a mechanical thermostat works is it measures the temperature at a single point in that tank. And based on whether the temperature is above or below a set point, it'll either turn the element on or off to the geyser. That's all well and good, except that the water inside your geyser is not one uniform temperature. Instead, it is very hot at the top and actually pretty cool at the bottom. And so when you have in the middle, say the temperature is 60 degrees, it actually might be 65 at the top and 40 at the bottom. Now, what happens when you get in your shower in the morning? You've got a nice full tank of hot water. You get in the shower, it pulls hot water out the top, it pushes cold water into the bottom, and that cold layer immediately goes up and covers the thermostat. And so almost immediately after you get into the shower in the morning, your mechanical thermostat is telling your geyser to reheat, even though that water it's reheating, you're only going to need tonight or tomorrow morning when you shower again. And so you are enduring all of these losses over the course of the entire day from prematurely reheating your geyser at the moment that you used it the last time around. By understanding when you actually want hot water, we can then shift that heating much closer to the time that you actually need it, thereby avoiding all of those losses that would have been incurred throughout the day. Secondly, it does targeted energy shifting. So this is talking to SolarBot. It turns on when there's extra solar available. And then finally, it has best-in-class leak detection. So not only does it do all these cool things for the energy system in your home, but it also can detect if your geyser springs a leak and then take remedial action to prevent that from causing damage, both by notifying you and if you have a shut-off valve installed, closing that shut-off valve to prevent the leak from growing any bigger. This is actually a pretty cool part of our product as well. It's best in class because if you look at others' leak detectors, they'll have a single point leak detection. it actually usually looks like a two-pronged plug that they put in the drip tray. And how it works is if water bridges the two prongs of those plugs, a leak is detected. However, that requires there to be water in that one spot in the tray. What we do instead, and give me a second if I've got one around here. I do. This is, as you can hear, something just fell. This is our leak detection cable. It's a meter long, and you lay this along the whole drip tray underneath the geyser. And what this allows us to do is a single drop of water touches anywhere along that whole meter length will recognize the leak and be able to take remedial action. And so we have much greater coverage, and as a result, much more effective leak detection than others in the market. The real power, though, comes when HotBot and SolarBot work together, and we like to call it our power duo. And together they maximize solar usage and enhance the overall efficiency of the home. And they obviously, as I've mentioned, they're talking wirelessly to each other to optimize the battery state of charge, to shift geyser heating over to solar times, and to prevent the geyser from heating during outages or if the circuit's overloaded. And that's a really important point as well, that the way that homes have typically been installing solar so far is you have something called an essential circuit and a non-essential circuit. And the essential circuit is basically backed up your battery during outages, and the non-essential circuit is not backed up by your battery during outages. And people have been putting their geysers on the non-essential circuit because they're scared that when there's an outage, if the geyser's on, it might exceed the load of the inverter and trip the inverter, or it might come on and drain their battery, preventing them from using their battery for other things in their home. SolarBot and HotBot prevent both of these problems. I've already mentioned that HotBot will turn off when there's an outage to prevent it from draining your battery. One of the very cool things is that it does that fast enough that it also prevents your inverter from tripping. So SolarBot will immediately detect that your inverter is going beyond its limits. It'll send a wireless signal to HotBot. HotBot will turn off fast enough to prevent your inverter from tripping, meaning that you can put all these appliances onto your essential circuit and get the most out of your solar system. So let's look at a couple of case studies to give you a sense of the actual impact that we've managed to create. The first case study is from someone called Leanne, and Leanne went from not being able to use solar at all, not being able to use all of her solar to not having enough solar, thanks to our system. So Leanne was spending between 2,500 and 4,500 Rand per month on grid electricity. This is after she'd already installed a solar system. That solar system was a 5.5 kilowatt peaks of solar, an 8 kilowatt day inverter, and 10 kilowatt hours of battery. And we then went and installed SolarBot and HotBot. And this is what happened. According to her, since installing SolarBot, my electricity bill has decreased by an average of 2,000 Rand per month. To explain how, let's look at some of her data. So what you're seeing here is a comparison of how much solar she used before and after compared to how much solar she actually had the potential to generate. So that's what these two line colors are showing. In orange is what we call her available solar. If the solar system was generating at 100% of its potential in all hours of the day, given the actual weather conditions that existed on that particular day, this is what the solar generation would look like. The blue is then the actual solar generation, how much solar was actually generated by the home. And the difference here is what was curtailed because there wasn't enough demand in the home to actually use that solar. And so before, this home was only using 69% of their solar energy, whereas afterwards you can see that we pretty much maxed out her solar utilization and got that up to 98%. What's interesting is when you look at some of the other data related to her system, particularly the battery state of charge, you can see before in blue, she was charging her battery and it was pretty much getting to full every day. However, now in orange, we're starting the battery charge much lower at the start of the day. It's starting at about 40% versus 80%. But we're never fully charging the battery. It only reaches about 80% in the middle of towards the end of the day. At the same time, you can see that in the before and after grid usage, the blue to the orange has come down a lot. There's been a big reduction in grid usage, but some orange remains. There's still some consumption in the evening, and there's still some consumption in the early morning. And so Piecing this all together, what it tells us is that, look, Leanne's saving 2,000 Rand per month, but there's more to it than that. We've optimized her system as far as possible, but it turns out she has insufficient solar. If she were to install a few more solar panels, what would happen is that energy would flow into the battery and charge the battery up to 100%. She would then use that battery instead of using the grid for some of this nighttime usage. And this curve over here would actually just get bigger. The whole orange shape would get bigger, and the solar generated would expand to fill that space. And she'd end up a lot better off. And this would actually be a great investment for her because the cost of panels is low. She doesn't need to buy a new inverter. She doesn't need to buy a new battery. She just needs to slap another 3 or 4 panels on there, and her electricity bill will plummet. The second example is Paul. And so Paul maxes out his battery capacity and still leaves some solar unused. So Paul was spending 1,500 Rand per month on electricity before SolarBot. He already had a solar system that was a 6.2 kilowatt peak solar system with an 8 kilowatt SunSync inverter and 10 kilowatt hours of battery. And we installed SolarBot and HotBot. According to Paul, after installing SolarBot, I'm saving about 450 Rand a month in my electricity bills. SolarBot sends extra solar power to my geyser, which is managed by HotBot. So I have hot water all day. This means I need less heating in the morning and evening, which definitely saves me money. So actually, first, let me just talk about the big differences between the 450 Rand that Paul claims he's saving versus the 2,000 Rand, which Leanne says she's saving. And the reason for that is SolarBot and HotBot will optimize your solar system as much as possible, but there are hard limits to how far I can optimize it based on what infrastructure you have in place. If you simply don't have enough solar panels, there's only so much we can do. Or if you started in a state where you are better optimized to begin with, there's obviously less of an improvement that we can make. Despite that, we're seeing, in general, a significant improvement where, in line with what these case examples we're showing. So let me show you how we achieved this at Paul. So again, you can see before he was using about 56% of his solar. Afterwards, we managed to increase that to about 83%. And you can see that we did that by creating demand in the first half of the day. However, at some point around 11 a.m. or so, demand suddenly drops off, probably when the battery is fully charged. And because there's insufficient demand in the home after that, we can't fully utilize his solar panels. And so his utilization remains capped at 83%. If you look at his other charts, you can now see that his battery fully charges off the solar even afterwards. Before, he was starting at 80% and was charging pretty early in the day. Now he's starting at between 40 and 50% in this case and getting charged much later in the day. However, that corroborates what we saw on the previous chart, that his battery is being fully charged by around 11 a.m. or so, and that means there's nowhere for the energy to go, and solar is being curtailed. And so for Paul, it's great that we've delivered 450 Rand electricity savings, but in terms of his diagnosis and recommendations, we tell him that the system is optimized as far as possible, but his battery capacity is insufficient. He's got, if he had more battery capacity, there would be somewhere for the solar to go. It could continue to charge that battery and eat away some of this grid usage that happens overnight. So our recommendation to him would be, look, create more demand in your home, and you'll get better use out of your solar panels. You can create that demand by adding an additional HotBot if you've got a second geyser, and we'll shift that geyser's demand into sunny times as well. Add other load control, and I'll give you an example of that in a second. Or add more battery capacity. And I'd say that's probably the third option, given that the first two would be much more cost effective. Obviously, we can't take you through every case study that we've done. We've deployed SolarBot into tens of homes over the course of the last year and carefully monitored what the impact has been. And obviously now we're ramping up into much bigger numbers together with households. But to give you a sense of some of the other themes that have emerged from our trial so far, Mike from Cape Town said, thanks to Plentify, we eliminated most of our electricity bill and stayed warm this winter by running our underfloor heating entirely on solar. So to give you a little bit more color into Mike's story, Mike moved into a new house in Cape Town this winter, and was unpleasantly surprised by how cold the house was. And so we decided, okay, cool. They're going to get a wood-burning fireplace, something that they've always loved, and had a little bit of money set aside to install this thing. And they got the fireplace installer to come around. And unfortunately, because it's an old house and it's a funny layout, there's no way to get a chimney straight out from a fireplace out of the roof. Instead, you'd have to like take this wiggly route through different cavities and walls and stuff like that to eventually get it out the house, which is expensive, but also a major maintenance concern, because if that gets blocked, how on earth do you unblock it? So Mike told us this story, and we took a look at his solar system, and we realized it actually looked kind of similar to Paul, this one we saw before over here, where, look, we'd optimize the system as much as possible, but there was this afternoon gap where solar was just not being used. And we said to him, cool, Mike, turn on your underfloor heating at the specific time every single day, and let's see what happens. And what happened was he powered his underfloor heating entirely on solar. He used no grid electricity. He turned off his underfloor heating every evening, and the heat that he had accumulated in his home from that afternoon underfloor heating was enough to get him through to the next day. And so he avoided this expensive capital project of installing a fireplace and ran his underfloor heating entirely on solar in the middle of winter. Karina is another example. She says, I felt like a technological dinosaur, but Plentify is just taking control of all my worries. I have absolutely no concerns about when the geyser is going to be hot. And I think this speaks to another one of our value propositions around accessibility of our technology. We really design it to be as intuitive and user-friendly as possible, so that you don't need a PhD to run your solar system, so that it just makes sense and gives you the data and the information you need to make the most effective decisions for yourself. Thanks. That brings us to the close of at least the presented slides, but we'd love to take your questions.